My sister-in-law tried to poison me at my husband's birthday party after I announced my second pregnancy. The first time my sister-in-law tried to kill me was at my husband's birthday party. The shrimp she handed me with that perfect smile was laced with rat poison. I should have seen it coming. I used to believe in fairy tales. The kind where love conquers all and family stands by you through thick and thin. 7 years into my marriage with Harry, I still had most of that dream, just with one wicked witch I never asked for. My name is Mia. I'm 29, and from the outside, my life looks picture perfect. A loving husband who still looks at me the way he did when we first met. A beautiful 2-year-old son, Nate, with his father's eyes and my stubborn chin. A career I worked hard for. A home we built together. But there's a crack in this perfect picture. Harry's sister, Brianna. The first time I met her, I had no idea she would become my personal nightmare for years to come. She smiled, hugged me, even complimented my dress. Harry always had good taste, she said, her eyes not quite matching her smile. I should have seen it then. If my life was a peaceful meadow, Brianna was the storm always lurking on the horizon, ready to destroy everything in its path. It wasn't normal sisterly concern. Brianna was obsessed with controlling Harry's life. When he was 17, she practically forced him to date her best friend, acting like she had some divine right to decide who he loved. By 23, Harry had to fight her, actually fight, because she was pushing him towards someone else she approved of. Then I came along, and I wasn't Brianna's choice. That was the problem. Harry talks about you so much, she said during our first dinner together, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite place then. It's sweet how infatuated he is. Harry didn't notice the way her eyes dissected me, looking for flaws, but I felt it, that unsettling feeling when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. Soon, her dislike became less subtle. She'd accidentally invite Harry's exes to family gatherings. She'd reminisce about women from his past right in front of me, then look at me with that mocking smile when I showed any discomfort. "Are you jealous?" she once asked me, her voice honey-sweet poison. A confident woman wouldn't be bothered by the past. I started to realize Brianna wasn't just toxic. She wanted to destroy what I had, and she was just getting started. The day Harry and I announced our engagement should have been one of the happiest moments of my life. His parents popped champagne, his cousins cheered. Everyone was celebrating except Brianna. She sat frozen, her face drained of color like she'd just witnessed a death. Then, without warning, she stood up and walked out of the party. The room fell silent. I felt a chill run down my spine, like someone had opened a window to a winter storm. Later that night, Harry's phone rang. It was Brianna, sobbing so loudly I could hear her through the speaker. "How could you tell everyone at the same time?" she wailed. "You know I'm the most important person in your life. I should have been the first to know." I stared at Harry, stunned. Who reacts that way to their brother's engagement? That night, my phone pinged with a text from Brianna. "I hope you know how to be a good wife. Until now, I've been the only important woman in my brother's life." I didn't respond, but I knew this was just the beginning. As wedding preparations began, Brianna's mask fell completely. Every choice I made was wrong in her eyes. My dress was basic. Our venue was predictable. Our color scheme was childish. One afternoon, while discussing flower arrangements with Harry's mom, Brianna walked in, arms crossed, and surveyed the samples on the table. "This is so you," she said with a smirk. "Not a hint of sophistication anywhere." Something in me snapped. Months of passive-aggressive comments, fake smiles, and backhanded compliments culminated in that moment. "If you hate this wedding so much, maybe you shouldn't come," I fired back. The room went silent. Brianna's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe I'd actually challenged her. Despite everything, I didn't want to be the one who banned Harry's sister from our wedding. I didn't want to give her ammunition to paint me as the villain in her twisted narrative, so we invited her, hoping she'd at least respect the occasion. I should have known better. On our wedding day, while everyone wore pastels and florals as requested, Brianna arrived in a floor-length black dress with a veil. She looked like she was attending a funeral. As guests whispered and stared, she held her head high and announced to anyone who would listen, "I'm in mourning. I lost my brother today. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach." Harry was so furious he asked his parents to escort her out. They did, but the damage was done. A shadow had been cast over our perfect day. After the wedding, I tried to distance myself from Brianna. We'd see her at family gatherings, but I kept our interactions brief and superficial. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would respect our boundaries now that we were married. I was wrong. She began scrutinizing everything I posted online, even though she didn't follow me. She'd bring up my posts at family dinners, questioning my parenting choices when Nate was born, criticizing how I decorated our home, even commenting on my weight fluctuations after pregnancy. The real nightmares were only beginning, and I had no idea how much worse things could get. 2 years after our wedding, we welcomed our son Nate into the world. He was perfect. Harry's dimples, my stubborn chin, and the sweetest temperament a baby could have. Those first few months were a blur of midnight feedings, first smiles, and the indescribable joy of watching this tiny human we created. But even in those precious moments, Brianna's shadow loomed. When Harry's parents suggested we invite her to meet Nate, I refused. After everything she's done, I asked Harry one night as we watched Nate sleep, I don't want that energy around our son. Harry understood, but his parents kept pushing. Family is family, they'd say, not understanding that sometimes family can be poison. Then, during a Sunday dinner at my in-laws, Harry's mother revealed something that made me pause. Brianna had suffered a miscarriage 2 years ago with Jamie, her boyfriend at the time. It destroyed her, my mother-in-law whispered. She's never been the same since. I felt a twinge of empathy I hadn't expected. Grief can change people, make them lash out. Could that explain her behavior? Was I denying her a chance to heal by keeping Nate from her? Against my better judgment, I agreed to let Brianna meet Nate at a family gathering. To my surprise, she was gentle with him. She held him carefully, cooed to him softly, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw a different side of her. He's beautiful, Mia, she said, and for once, there was no edge to her voice. Over the next few weeks, Brianna visited several times. She brought gifts for Nate, asked thoughtful questions about his routine, and seemed genuinely interested in being a good aunt. I began to wonder if I'd been too harsh, if perhaps she had changed. I should have known better. It started subtly. Brianna would drop by unannounced, claiming she just happened to be in the neighborhood. She'd question how I was feeding Nate, if I was dressing him warmly enough, if I was stimulating his development properly. When not focused on Nate, she'd complain about her job, her friends, her life, and increasingly, about Jamie. Nothing was ever her fault. Her boss was unreasonable. Her friends were disloyal. Jamie was inattentive. Then, as suddenly as she had reappeared in our lives, Brianna vanished. No calls, no texts, no visits. Harry tried reaching out, but she wouldn't respond. 3 months later, we saw it on social media. Brianna had married Jamie in a small ceremony. We weren't invited. When Harry finally got hold of her, her explanation was like a slap in the face. "You know what, Harry?" she said, her voice ice cold. "I didn't want Mia there. I couldn't trust she wouldn't ruin my wedding." I nearly choked on the irony. The woman who wore black to my wedding was worried I would ruin hers? This time, I refused to stay silent. I told Harry's parents everything. Every manipulative comment, every underhanded tactic, every attempt to undermine our relationship. This time, they listened. When Brianna called her parents for her promised wedding fund, they declined. They told her they couldn't support her behavior anymore. She broke down, begging and pleading, but for once they stood firm. Her wedding was modest compared to what she'd planned, and from what we heard, she blamed everyone but herself for it. A month after her wedding, Brianna appeared at our door, tears streaming down her face. She apologized profusely, admitting she'd been jealous and petty. She promised she'd changed, that she wanted to be a real family. I was exhausted by this cycle, but for Harry's sake, I agreed to try again. We had dinner together. We shared pictures of Nate. We talked about her new marriage. For a while, it seemed like Brianna had finally grown up. But deep down, I knew better. I could see it in her eyes when she looked at our home, our son, our life. She wasn't done with us. She was just regrouping, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Just 6 months after her wedding, Brianna showed up at our doorstep unannounced, mascara streaming down her face. Harry let her in while I put Nate down for his nap. It's all falling apart, she sobbed into her hands at our kitchen table. Jamie and we've been trying to have a baby, but it's not happening. I felt a pang of sympathy despite myself. Infertility can be devastating. Have you both been checked by a doctor? I asked gently. Her head snapped up. It's him. Jamie has the problem, not me. The doctors confirmed it. The venom in her voice surprised me. This wasn't grief, this was rage. In the weeks that followed, Brianna became a regular fixture in our home again. But something had shifted. She wasn't just venting about her marriage anymore. She was watching me, studying me. It was subtle at first, questions about my schedule, my habits, my routine with Nate. Why do you always bring extra clothes to work? She asked one afternoon while we were folding laundry. The question caught me off guard. I go to the gym before work, I explained. If I don't change, I'll be sweaty all day. She just nodded, saying nothing more, but something in her eyes made my skin crawl. 2 weeks later, we were having dinner at Harry's parents' house. The evening had been pleasant. Nate charming everyone with his new words, Harry's dad telling stories about work, his mom proudly serving her famous pot roast. Then, as we were finishing dessert, Brianna cleared her throat. Harry, she said, her voice honey-sweet, I've been meaning to ask. Did you get a prenup with Mia? The table went silent. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Harry frowned. No, we both work hard and make good money. It wasn't necessary. Brianna let out a cold laugh. Are you sure about that? There are a lot of cheaters out there. I sat there stunned, as she turned to face me directly. Are you sure Mia isn't seeing someone else? She's always carrying extra clothes with her. My heart stopped. Was she seriously implying? Brianna, Linda, Harry's mom, gasped. That's enough. But Brianna wasn't finished. Her eyes slid to Nate, who was happily smashing banana pudding into his high chair tray, oblivious to the tension. Actually, she said slowly, are we sure Nate is even Harry's? He doesn't look much like him. The room froze. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. This woman, this monster, had just accused me of infidelity and questioned our son's paternity in front of the entire family. Harry stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. I'd never seen him so angry. His face was flushed, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Maybe this is why you don't have children yet, he said, his voice eerily calm. Because you don't deserve to be a mother? Brianna's face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes, but for once, no one moved to comfort her. No one told Harry he'd gone too far. No one made excuses for her behavior. Robert, Harry's father, stood up. I think it's time for you to leave, Brianna. You're choosing her over me? Brianna cried, pointing at me. Your own daughter? No, Linda said quietly. We're choosing decency. What you said was unforgivable. That night, as we drove home in silence, Harry reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm done, he said. That's it. She's not part of our lives anymore. I nodded, relieved but also sad for him. Cutting off family is never easy, even when it's necessary. We blocked Brianna's number that night. We removed her from our social media. We told Harry's parents we wouldn't attend any gatherings where she was present. But as I tucked Nate into bed that night, kissing his soft cheek, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Someone capable of such cruelty wouldn't simply disappear from our lives. I didn't know it then, but Brianna was already planning her next move, one that would make her previous actions look like child's play. 2 months after cutting ties with Brianna, I sat on the bathroom floor staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. My hands trembled as I called for Harry. Are you serious? He whispered when I showed him, his eyes wide with wonder. We hadn't planned on having another child so soon, but as the shock wore off, joy took its place. We agreed to keep it our secret until Harry's birthday party the following weekend, a perfect opportunity to share the news with family. Little did we know, Brianna had secrets of her own. The day of Harry's birthday arrived with perfect weather for the backyard barbecue his parents had planned. Linda and Robert had transformed their garden with streamers and balloons. Nate toddled around in his little bow tie, charming everyone. I was helping Linda arrange a fruit platter when I heard Harry's voice rise in surprise. Brianna, what are you doing here? My stomach dropped. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, looking immaculate in a pale blue sundress, clutching a wrapped gift. Before Harry could say anything else, she rushed forward and threw her arms around him. "I've missed you so much," she sobbed. "I'm sorry for everything. I've been seeing a therapist and I've changed. I swear I have." Harry stiffened, not returning her embrace. "Mom and Dad didn't mention you were coming." "They didn't know," she admitted. "Please don't make me leave. It's your birthday." Harry looked at me, his expression conflicted. I gave a small nod. It was his day, and a scene would only make things worse. But something felt off. Brianna was too cheerful, too animated, too normal. The darkness I'd always sensed beneath her smile seemed hidden, but not gone. Midway through the party, Harry clinked his glass. "Mia and I have an announcement." He looked at me, eyes sparkling. "We're expecting another baby." The backyard erupted in cheers and congratulations. Everyone rushed to hug us, everyone except Brianna. From the corner of my eye, I saw her face drain of color, her knuckles white around her wine glass. Then she slipped away from the group, disappearing into the house. A chill ran down my spine, but I was quickly surrounded by well-wishers, distracted by their joy and questions. When dinner was served, I started to get up to help, but Robert insisted I stay seated. "You're eating for two now," he said with a wink. I was chatting with Harry's cousin when Brianna appeared beside me, holding a plate heaped with food. "Here," she said, her smile just a bit too wide. "I fixed this for you. Consider it my apology for the past." I was surprised, but took the plate with a polite, "Thank you." Then I looked down and froze. There, nestled between the potatoes and salad, were several large shrimp. Everyone in the family knew about my severe shellfish allergy. I'd ended up in the emergency room twice since meeting Harry because of accidental exposure. My heart raced. Was this a mistake, or Mia not eating the shrimp? Jamie appeared beside us, looking casually at my plate. "I'll take those. Love 'em." Without thinking, relieved to be rid of the dangerous food, I handed him the plate. 5 minutes later, chaos erupted. Jamie doubled over, clutching his stomach. His face turned ashen, then he collapsed to his knees, vomiting violently. "Something's wrong!" Brianna screamed, kneeling beside him. "Help him!" Jamie began convulsing on the ground. Someone called 911 while Robert tried to keep Jamie's airways clear. As the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, a horrifying realization crashed over me. That plate was meant for me. And with my allergy, I wouldn't have just gotten sick. I might have died. I caught Brianna watching me from beside the ambulance, and in that moment I knew. This wasn't a mistake. She had tried to kill me. Everything happened so quickly after Jamie was rushed to the hospital. The police arrived, taking statements and collecting samples of the food. Harry held my hand as I struggled through my statement, my voice shaking as I explained that the plate was originally meant for me. 2 days later, the detective called. The lab results were back. "Mrs. Carter, the food contained high levels of rodenticide. This wasn't an accident." A cold weight settled in my stomach. I'd suspected it, but hearing it confirmed made me dizzy with horror. Someone had deliberately tried to poison me. When Harry's parents heard the news, Linda remembered the security cameras they'd installed after a break-in last year. The footage was clear. Brianna in the kitchen, deliberately sprinkling something over the shrimp before carrying the plate directly to me. The next day, police cars pulled up to Brianna's house. I couldn't bring myself to be there, but Harry went with his parents. He later told me how Brianna crumbled when confronted with the evidence. "I didn't mean to hurt Jamie," she sobbed as they put her in handcuffs. "I just wanted Mia to get sick. I never thought Jamie would eat from her plate." Her confession, captured on police body cameras, sealed her fate. As they led her to the squad car, her face contorted with fear and rage, a mask finally slipping to reveal the monster beneath. Jamie filed for divorce immediately from his hospital bed. At the trial, he testified against her, describing her escalating obsession with me and Harry, her rage when she learned about my second pregnancy. The jury needed just 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 15 years for attempted murder. As they led her away, Brianna screamed and fought against the guards. "She stole everything from me, everything. She deserves to suffer." No one listened. No one cared. Her power over us was finally, completely broken. 2 months later, I gave birth to our daughter Emma. As I held her in my arms, Harry beside me, Nate peering curiously at his new sister, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. She's perfect, Harry whispered, tears in his eyes. Nate became the most devoted big brother, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bedtime stories. His little hand would pat Emma's head gently, his face solemn with responsibility. Jamie, despite everything, remained part of our extended family. He'd been an innocent victim, and in time, he became a close friend. Sometimes I catch him watching Nate and Emma play with a wistful expression, and I wonder if he thinks about the family he might have had if he'd married someone capable of love instead of obsession. I still think about Brianna sometimes. Not with fear, but with something like pity. She had so much family, opportunity, beauty, yet threw it all away because she couldn't bear to see someone else happy. The nightmares have stopped. The shadow she cast over our lives has lifted. We've moved forward into the sunlight where she can never reach us again.